Donald Trump's push to expand federal power and troops in the streets continues to draw protests over a creeping autocratic bent. Today, he is saying protesters may be targeting him because they're somehow on the take. And he's threatening to go after people he says would be funding protests.
Tonight, escalating federal power, threats to peaceful protest, and disturbing new revelations about who's being targeted. We're breaking down what the clip shows and why it matters.
They are professional agitators. They're professional. I had one the other night. I went into a restaurant, and this woman stood up. I looked at her immediately. She had money. She wasn't serious. They get paid for it. They're professional, from Soros and other people. And we're going to look into Soros because I think it's a RICO case against him and other people. Because this is more than like protests. This is real agitation.
He's claiming protesters are professional agitators paid by rich donors, and even threatens to pursue RICO cases. That's a huge escalation. Accusing donors of criminal conspiracy for funding protests is not the same as political rhetoric.
You can see what used to be sort of broadly mused about or hinted on social media by Trump is now just day-to-day statements. He's admitting there something that could get a case thrown out if he really is ordering up a RICO case against a prominent Democratic donor. I mean, you heard the way he said that. There hasn't been any public reporting that Mr. Soros is funding the people that Trump ran into at the D.C. restaurant. And protesting peacefully is an American principle and certainly protected by the First Amendment. And yet Trump is not shy about a desire to punish free speech and to test how far he can get with his power. So he's saying they're going to send troops next to Memphis, part of the ongoing effort to put troops in the streets to affect things. He's done it in the Capitol.
Labeling peaceful protesters as paid operatives undermines First Amendment protections. If these claims are used to justify federal prosecutions or troop deployments, it could chill public dissent.
And this is not what the National Guard has been typically used for. Indeed, in L.A., we saw a judge say he went too far, although the exact line here is being worked out. And you might say, gosh, why hasn't the line been worked out before? Here's the answer. No other president in either party has sought to habitually deploy National Guard troops to this many cities without any ongoing reason or cooperation from those states' governors, who, of course, run the spectrum and are from both parties. So no one's ever actually tested this. We've had some problems and debates over the National Guard being deployed, but they were usually deployed because there was mass riot protests, nothing like what Trump is seizing as kind of his pretext, and almost always with the governor's cooperation. How does the Guard feel about this? Well, internal documents from this Guard under the Trump administration show some troops and veterans think this is a bad idea. They have shame around this type of mission. They're concerned that they are being used as pawns, leveraging fear that ultimately drives a wedge between the citizens and the military.
Next, the troops in the streets playbook. He's talking about federal forces and National Guard deployments to cities that haven't asked for them. And that's not normal.
The most important thing that we've seen in Washington, D.C., Matt, is the evidence that the American people don't have to live like this.
Chicago should be begging Donald Trump for help to keep Chicago safe. Yet they aren't. So we're going to go into a city who wants us there. They are a progressive city, and they don't want the president's help. That's on them. It's horrific that they don't want President Trump's help.
I would love if we did this in every big American city.
Is it horrific that people aren't calling in the feds? Remember, traditional conservatism is you don't bring out soldiers or the federal government to deal with every problem. Since the founding of this country, the Conservative Party, and its name has changed over time, but the Conservative Party and its principles has always been the feds are a last resort. Now, if you have a sprawling multi-day riot, sometimes you've seen it. You bring in the feds, but you don't bring them in to police every street corner. They're not of the community. They don't have the relationships there. They're not answerable to the local community. That's why conservatives have always been skeptical of too much use of federal power. And now that this is moving from what you might call the blue cities, as Trump puts it, to elsewhere, we are hearing some voices. Republican Senator Tillis says it's a problem to send troops to his state. We're also seeing other scenes in Trump's America, a video that has caused a lot of concern as masked federal agents went in surrounding this car, smashed the window, and detained people at gunpoint.
Remember, the Guard typically acts with state cooperation. Deploying federal forces without local buy-in risks, turning law enforcement into a political tool.
With guns drawn, masked federal agents shatter the driver's side window of a car, grab two men inside, and push them to the pavement. A third person in the orange Chevy Camaro, a woman, can be heard shouting at one of the agents not to touch her and to identify himself. Other witnesses say the two men are lawful permanent residents or green card holders and were hauled away from the scene in handcuffs by agents.
When someone runs up on you like that in the middle of the day for no apparent reason, it actually makes sense that you would ask who they are. Do you even know if you're experiencing a law enforcement operation or a potential kidnapping? And if they are masked and aggressive and won't identify themselves, they're contributing to the problem, even if ultimately we learn that they are acting under the color of federal law. Local reports say the woman was pregnant and an American citizen.
Here's what this looks like on the ground. Masked agents smashing windows and detaining people at gunpoint. That's terrifying for civilians, especially if agents don't clearly identify themselves. Those detained were reportedly lawful residents. So swift, aggressive federal action raises questions about due process, civil liberties, and racial profiling.
So these are big problems for how we live now. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, but his crimes have left a long shadow, including the newly revealed so-called birthday book, which was only obtained because members of Congress finally forced a subpoena on his estate. Investigators in New York City were seen Wednesday. They met with lawyers from the estate about the book. Outlets like The New Yorker and The Atlantic have pointed out that even when you put Trump aside, if you care about victims and the law, this is even worse than people might realize. You need to understand it and see how bad it was. And then you add to that how many rich elite men, many in the sort of Wall Street corridor, including Donald Trump, appeared from the book to know exactly what Epstein was up to, or at least that he was up to some level of crime. There's a message with an Epstein acquaintance reminiscing about picking up girls on the beach, telling them with knife in hand to get naked, and then, quote, just joking. Another book page shows what appears to be a very young girl here, was obviously redacted, but the point being what could very well be a minor and a real person, a victim. It's from a section in the book that is titled Children and contains letters and drawings that at least simulate the handwriting of children. This is now the convicted sex crimes, including Maxwell, who's still in prison, although remember, this book, these activities, the Trump administration helped her get to an easier prison. And then you have, within that context, this now infamous letter, which Donald Trump denied, sued over, but now here we have it in public in the book and in the possession of Congress. Senate Republicans, meanwhile, are still blocking an effort by Democrats to get the rest of the files released. And if you see that birthday book, which hides behind jokes and different sort of dances, imagine what else the documents might show. The House also inched closer to a vote on those files after a Democrat won a special election in Virginia by a whopping 50 points. Survivors are demanding transparency.
And then there's the Epstein material, the birthday book, and accounts that suggest a sordid network of elites. Even setting politics aside, this is about victims demanding transparency. So, you've got rhetoric about RICO cases against donors, routine use of federal troops in cities, aggressive masked operations, and explosive documents about powerful figures. Each piece alone is alarming. Together, they form a pattern we can't ignore.
It's not just that they're ignoring survivors when they're having meetings, when they're discussing, when they're talking with the convicted pedophile sex trafficker.
Who I saw and what I experienced there was was a glimpse into a very dark and disturbing world.
I felt I had no choice. If I disobeyed him, I knew something bad would happen.
It really just made me ill when I went through it. It really just solidified to me what the culture of Epstein and his friends were. And it's right there in black and white in this book.
Will you meet with the Epstein victims? Do you plan to meet with?
I don't know about, nobody suggested that. Certainly I don't like that whole situation with respect to anybody being abused or hurt, but I haven't even thought about that.
The people who know the most about this are Epstein dead, his co-conspirator in prison, and the victims. Now, through only this pressure, the rest of the country is learning a bit more and perhaps deciding what to do about it.
Will courts or Congress check these federal overreaches? Will victims get full transparency? And, most urgently, how will ordinary Americans keep their constitutional protections when politics and force collide? Drop your thoughts below and share this breakdown.